Welcome, everybody. I'm just going to give another couple seconds to let everybody join. Well, welcome back to our Thursday weekly platform trial update. I'm Mariah Cudkowicz. Today we have two, they're guests on this call, but they've been integral members of the platform trial, and actually most ALS trials, for almost as long as I've been in the field. Meghan Hall and Mariah Connolly from the Barrow Neurological Institutes, and they are the lead monitoring team for the HEALEY platform trial and many other ALS trials. And they're here today to tell you about what they do and to answer any of your questions and their important role in having good, high quality data for our clinical trials. With that, I'll pass to you, Meghan.
Wonderful. Well, hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Meghan Hall, as Merritt mentioned in the introduction. I am the Director of Research Operations at BNI, and I will let Mariah introduce herself.
My name is Mariah. I have been on the BNI CRO team for a little over 3 years now, and recently transitioned into more of a program manager role on our team, but was a senior clinical research associate. So been in the field just like Meghan. So we're excited to really explain what that entails.
Great, thank you. Next slide. So we wanted to spend just a few minutes today to talk about, why is clinical monitoring important in clinical trials, and then also to provide an overview of the type of monitoring that we're involved in for the HEALEY ALS platform study and why that's important. Next slide. So what is monitoring? When you hear about clinical monitoring, a lot of people don't know that this is really a critical and integral functional group within any clinical trial infrastructure. And it is a team of clinical research associates, they're research professionals, that really partner with the sites and the sponsor to ensure that a trial is conducted, recorded and reported in accordance with the protocol, standard operating procedures, good clinical practices, and the applicable regulatory requirements. Next slide. Our focus is really on quality. So when, I try to summarize in just a few words, why monitoring is important, I really say we want to make sure that the work that everyone is doing involved in the infrastructure and building a clinical trial to executing a clinical trial, from the sponsor side, the CRO side, the sites that invest all of the time to get clinical trials up and running and executing them, and most importantly, the research participants that are volunteering their time. We want to make sure all of that effort is worthwhile, and that we can have confidence in the data that's collected, and that we can trust the integrity of that data. So, that can be used then in a study analysis so that we can really determine, the outcome of that clinical trial and have, confidence and trust in those results. So the role of the clinical monitor, really they play a couple of different parts, but they provide training for the sites. So we'll work with the sites to set up remote trainings. We'll meet with them for sometimes 4 to 5 hours to do an initial training and then subsequent protocol trainings. And then another big piece of what we do is we physically go out to the sites. So we're going out to the sites every approximately 8 weeks to visit the clinical trial sites. Mariah will talk a little bit more about that. But when we're on site, we really are going through that clinical study data and making sure that is the site following the study protocol? Does everything look to be accurate, complete? Is it legible? Does it match what's in the database? And that's really, really important for the integrity of the clinical trial, especially if moving forward with any regulatory approvals down the road. And also, most importantly, we want to make sure that the rights and the well-being of research participants are protected. So does it look like the site is doing their due diligence and doing the appropriate procedures in terms of consenting and caring for the participants that are enrolled at their site? Next slide. So a lot of people don't know that in a clinical trial, every single data point has to meet specific elements in order to be what we consider verified. and then that will in turn be used in the study analysis. So we use a little acronym called ALCOA, with now it has a C at the end of it. And that just, is a reminder that all of the data has to be attributable to the participant in the study. So, and the individual collecting it, that it's legible, that anyone, kind of coming in from outside of the study can understand and read the actual handwritten study records or electronic records. That contemporaneous means, is it being collected in real time? Is it original data? So we can tell that that data is original for that study, and also is it accurate and complete? Next slide. And this it's just a sort of a very simple visual, but one of the aspects of clinical monitoring is what we call source data verification. So not only just ensuring that the protocol is being followed, but following that ALCOA-C acronym, we really look at, on the right side of the screen here, you can see this is an example of some data that for vital signs that was being reported for the study as part of one of the study procedures. And then on the left side, you can see that data is also entered into an electronic data capture database, also known as an EDC. And so we have to make sure that whatever is in the electronic EDC, there's also supporting source documentation for that. So essentially, you can recreate the study based on the paper records that a site has on file. And that's really important to ensure that, again, we have quality data, that we can trust the integrity of the data, that data is collected by individuals that are trained, and then, what we call delegated. So meaning that the physician, the overall site investigator leading the study at that site has, ensured that that individual is trained and it's within their scope of practice to collect that data. Next slide. And monitoring also helps with some, risk mitigation. So we sometimes in a clinical trial, I always say we're humans conducting human subjects research. So there's going to be unforeseen things that pop up. And so part of a CRA's role, monitor's role, is to kind of be the eyes and the ears of the study. And when they're out at these sites, and sometimes an issue might pop up in terms of the way that a certain, item in the protocol is being interpreted, or any tools that that the site may have or not have to conduct the study, we can certainly bring that back to the study team and the sponsor to review, so that we can, help prevent any errors from occurring or future errors. So it's really also an important component for risk mitigation and overall conducting a quality study. Next slide. And then this is, just not to scare anyone, but it is also really important that we have monitors to ensure that there's no intentional fraud or fabrication of clinical trial data. Throughout the history of research, there have been instances, even, recently, in the news of clinical trials having, issues where there's data being falsified and fabricated. And so part of the monitor's job is to also make sure that whatever is being collected truly is attributable to a research participant, that it's not being fabricated or made up. And so again, going back to that point of really having trust in the integrity and quality of the clinical trial data. So we really look for anything that, looks like it's been intentionally manipulated, that is intentionally omitted, that could put into question the integrity of the study data. Unfortunately, in my career, almost 15 years of monitoring, I've seen very, very little of this, but is also one of the kind of primary aims of clinical monitoring. Next slide. Now Mariah is going to talk a bit about our participation and monitoring for the HEALEY ALS Platform Trial. We've been extraordinarily proud to be a collaborator in this amazing platform trial design, and working with the HEALEY staff has been wonderful, and working with them on regular site management with the project and data management teams, as well as other functional groups to support the sites, has been just one of the greatest experiences of my career. And I think Mariah can, we both feel the same way. So I'll turn it over to her to talk a little bit about monitoring for HEALEY platform.
Yeah, thank you so much, Megan. I think the HEALEY platform trial is pivotal in many ways, and I think that applies to monitoring as well. We've really, from starting, really the boom of the pandemic and really having to do a lot of this remotely at the beginning to now, like Meghan said, traveling about 8 weeks to each of the sites, which is exciting and a little exhausting, but again, in a good way. We really have team members. I don't even know how many team members we're up to at this point. We've grown a lot in the past 3 years since I started, but we're really spread out across the US, though our base is still in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm actually that little star in Georgia there. I recently moved out there. But having the study monitor spread out across the US really does help with travel and being able to reduce a little bit of that exhaustion when traveling so much. As you can see, I'm traveling now. I'm come to you from a hotel room. But that is really kind of the part of the day-to-day of our jobs, going on site, looking through those documents like Meghan explained. And then really after we look through all of those and finish on site, meet with the primary doctor, the primary site investigator, we create several different forms of documentation of the visit, one of which is really a report to document not only what we reviewed, but what was discussed, any issues that may have been identified, maybe improvements that they've made since their previous monitoring visit, really to help close the loop and have a really clear picture of where the site is as a whole. And of course, any ways that we can help them, any additional support that they need, or anything else that we can provide them. And then like Meghan explained, we really work closely with a lot of the other functional groups who I'm sure have also been on these calls on other Thursdays, but really making sure that as a whole, we can help run a successful study and really trust that all of the data collected is accurate. And again, that patient safety and patient well-being is top of mind for everyone. And then we can go to the next slide. I think that's just questions.
Thank you. We have one question that came in while you were speaking, which is just if you could explain what EDC stands for and what's an EDC.
Oh, go ahead, Mariah. You can take that one.
Yeah, EDC is electronic data capture. So I know there was a slide previously where Meghan explained the paper document compared to the electronic document. So that's really where sites are going in and entering that data after their study visits. And then that's really where the data is pulled to be used for analysis. So the data management team may be looking in that electronic data capture for specific trends, but we're really looking at kind of both ends of it to make sure that that data is valid and accurate.
Thank you. And we'll have hopefully more questions for you too. I'll give a brief update on the platform trial and then we'll open up for Q&A. Maybe the next slide. So I know many of you come every week. So this is just the picture of the current drugs in the platform trial. We are actively enrolling in what we call Regimen E, the pink one, which is a drug trehalose that disrupts protein aggregation and helps clear misfolded proteins. We're about halfway done with enrolling there, and we're actively looking for people willing, interested to be part of that. We've completed enrollment for the other 4, and the regimen B, C, and D are an open label extension. Next slide, please. So for Regimen E, 137 people have signed informed consent. 97 of them have started Regimen E or the trehalose. And just as a reminder, we're looking for 160 people total. So we're more than halfway there. We're hoping to be done with enrollment Regimen E by November. That's our current goal. But of course, we'll keep going until we're fully enrolled. Next slide, please. We have 50 sites open for Regimen E. Here are the current ones. I think since last time we spoke, Stony Brook University has joined us. Next slide, please. As you know, Allison's here, and Catherine couldn't make it today, but they are our patient navigation team, a great resource for people living with ALS if you're interested to know about a site near you or about the platform trial or other trials, and you can sign up to get our newsletters with that QRS code. And also, please keep coming here. We do have some upcoming speakers. Dr. Elliott from Swedish Medical is going to join us September 29th, and Dr. Doatwright from UMass is going to join us October 6th. Next slide, please. So we want to get the word out a little bit more about Regimen E. We've done a webinar before about the science. We're going to give an update on the science and where that is. So Dr. Lada, who's with me, is co-leading this regimen, will join me and we'll give a talk on October 4th. That will be recorded. So if you can't make it, you could listen to it afterwards, but it will be mainly about the science, an update on the trial, and then answer any questions about Trehalose. Next slide, please. And that's it. So we'll open up for questions. Meghan and Mariah, I'll read the ones for you, and then you can decide who answers. It was I thought a CRO was a company versus BNI, which is a medical organization that sees people in clinic. If you could explain the difference.
I'm happy to touch on that one. So yes, BNI is a nonprofit, academic center. We're part of the larger St. Joseph's Hospital and Common Spirit Health Network. We do have one of our departments that supports clinical research activities, including the clinical monitoring academic program, as well as our outcomes training program. The name of our department is the BNI Clinical Research Organization. So very different than a for-profit CRO that you might hear about in the larger pharmaceutical research community. But that's a fantastic question because we do use the same acronym.
I'll add to that is that what Meghan and her team bring is expertise in ALS. So often when pharma companies use a commercial CRO, they come to the site and they have zero knowledge about ALS, and it's like starting all over again. And so you really bring all that knowledge to the monitoring, and I think it's a huge plus for ALS trials. I might take the next question, which is, has the database been locked yet for Regimen D, and any updates on when the top line results will be available? So no, the database has not been locked yet. The teams are working on that diligently. And usually it can be a couple weeks after the database is locked, because when you do the analyses, there's usually thousands of tables to go through and to make sure you do it right. But we will share once it's actually locked, but it's not locked yet. There's a question about Regimen. So there's a question, Regimen E is nearing full enrollment. Will Regimen F or G be up and running by the time E is fully enrolled? I might answer that one. I hope that Regimen E finishes long before that, I would say. I mean, our hope is to enroll as fast as possible so we can get results as fast as possible. Right now, as we've publicly announced that we're working with Cudkowicz and Revelatio, and they might be Regimen F and G. I think the timeline is likely in 2023, hopefully in the early part, but we don't have that fully set yet. We have selected a couple other companies to be part of the platform trial, at least 3. We're working on contracts with them, and once those contracts are signed, we'll announce them. So we have quite a lot of interest in the platform trial. So I think we'll have several more enrolling in 2023. But right now, obviously, we're focused fully on getting Regimen E fully enrolled, and obviously analyzing all the results from regimens A through D. So I hope that answered your question, maybe too much. Let's see. Okay. There's a couple of questions about clean the data. Maybe so last week there was, and we weren't here last week, but I'll say last week there was a comment about needing to clean up the data for the placebo group. Could you elaborate on what that means and where that stands? I don't know if Mariah or Meghan, you want to talk about cleaning in general?
You want to take that one, Mariah?
And I apologize. I don't know if this is specifically for C after database lock or if it's for all of them.
All of them, I think.
I know you said we're still really working on getting that data in pristine shape for Regimen D, and we are having daily meetings and hourly emails, really making sure that everything is up to date and any questions have been resolved, really in communication with the sites constantly. If there's any updates that have been made, making sure that we can review that data quickly so that we can, again, verify that against those source documents that we discussed earlier. And then there's several other teams, of course, that do many other data cleaning. We have, of course, our biostatisticians that do a larger review of the data and the data management team, but I won't go into too much detail about their roles. I haven't tried that one out yet, but really all of the teams working as one to make sure that all of the data is really clean and ready.
Thank you. Someone wrote, I'm expecting to start a clinical trial before the end of the year. The neurologist where I will be participating at told me that even people that get placebo have positive outcomes by being monitored closely. If you could comment. And I don't know if Megan, you want to answer that?
Well, I think, in terms of the, from a clinical data standpoint, I mean, all clinical trial data is valuable, whether, and of course, in a randomized placebo-controlled study, we want to make sure that it is monitored very closely because we do need to be able to discern at the end of the study any differences between the active and then the placebo groups. And so I think that, that is certainly, advantageous and really critically important in any clinical trial, that especially that involves an actual pharmaceutical or device intervention for any research participants or active research partners, I like to say. So I think that's certainly important. And then I would I can defer to Mare on this too, but I think participating in clinical trials in general, it has some advantages for seeing your provider potentially more frequently, to being really closely followed, and that certainly can be a benefit of participating in research beyond contributing to the overall protocol and getting additional data to learn more about the disease.
There's a couple questions about when we're going to have results for C and D. And I'll just say that I don't have those timelines for you. I wish I did. We have locked B and C, but we have not locked D yet, because D was always started a little bit afterwards. Now, as you know, in the platform trial, we use the placebo data from participants from all the regimens for the other ones. So it's really important that all the data is clean. I mean, that's the advantage of the platform trial, that you can really lower the number of people on placebo by sharing that across the regimen. So we need all of those clean. But we promise to bring the results once we have them to this webinar as well as other webinars, so people know it as soon as possible. There's a question about when open label starts. Does it start after 6 months completion? Megan or Mariah?
Yes. So the active regimen right now, E, after 6 months of completing the 24-week treatment period, there's the opportunity to roll over into an open label extension, and that conversation about interest in the open label extension will happen initially during the consenting process, that is a component of the trial, but then formally at week 16, anyone that is volunteering, their participation in the study as a research participant will have the option to formally consent into the open label extension. And then there will be plans for rolling over into the OLE portion of the trial, and we would work closely with the clinical site to plan out that visit, and on the back end, they would work with their pharmacy to get the new drug kits that are specific for OLE.
We're very happy that the dialogue about OLE has changed in the community. For us, it's really required if someone's going to work with us on the platform trial that they provide open label extension for the participants. And as you know, we're also asking them for expanded access for people who can't be part of the trial for whatever reason. And we see that now in really every trial in ALS. So that's a combination of all your advocacy, our advocacies, and it's the right way to do it. And we are learning, like in the Amylyx study, how important that data is to also, understanding fully what the drug can do. So that's really important. There's a question about whether regimen D needs to be locked before we release results of B and C. And I'd say the easiest answer is to say yes, because a lot of what we call table listing figures and stuff, we can't do until all the data that's being used in analysis is locked. But again, A, B, C, and D were started in not that far apart in time. There's a question about, based on the data that we're seeing, are we hopeful about any of the drugs? And I'll just I may answer that and say that we don't know who's on drug and who's on placebo, and we don't peek at the data and look at the efficacy, because if we did, then we'd invalidate the entire study and it wouldn't be able to be used. And of course, we don't want to do that. So nobody here on the call knows anything about the results. The only group that ever sees the data during a trial is the Data Safety Monitoring Board, and they see it about every quarter or so, and we do interim looks at it for futility, for stopping it early if it's not going to work, like what happened with Regimen A. They're the only group that gets to ever really see it. Okay. So I was waiting for an Amylyx question, though Sabrina's not here. Do you believe FDA will give an answer on Amylyx before 9/29? I don't know, Meghan, Mariah, do you have a thought on that?
I think we're just holding it, that's the official PDUFA deadline date. So, I know it's short, it's only a few days away right now. So I think that will be the official release time frame. And I think, certainly in other instances, the company's notified and then they'll, publicly release their plans if approved.
Yeah, I agree. I'm betting 5 o'clock, 9/29, but I hope it's sooner, obviously. But again, a huge congratulations to everybody out there it was a really community effort to get where we are on that. So hopefully we'll be hearing something positive on the 29th. Is there guidance on whether AMX 035 can be started, assuming it's approved and available shortly before entering a platform trial or any other trial? That is a great question, and I have some thoughts on it, but I want to ask first Meghan or Mariah if you have some thoughts on that.
Mariah, do you mind?
I'm so sorry, my speaker's cut out.
It's whether if, let's say, Amylyx is approved, is there guidance on whether that would be allowed before entering really any trial, a platform?
I think there's no simple answer to that. We've definitely been in discussions with the different functional groups, how that would work. I know data is stratified in a different way based on if someone's on riluzole or Darivone or both or neither. So I know that they're working through all of those kinks, but without being one of the head honchos in charge, I would say there's a very reasonable possibility that would be incorporated fairly quickly into the next amendment.
Yeah, I think every company that's doing a trial in ALS is thinking this through, because of course the right thing to do for people is to allow them to be on any FDA approved drug, and that is the goal. The challenge comes, we saw this with the Amylyx, for anyone who followed the statistical debates between the FDA statisticians and the company statisticians, is that when you start a drug mid-trial and you're not, the groups aren't balanced between use of that, it causes a lot of difficulty interpreting the data. So the best thing is for someone to decide before, they're starting a trial, that if they're going to take a drug and then do the 30 days, make sure it's safe, and then get what we call stratified, means that a balanced number of people on that drug go into active versus placebo. And that will probably be what happens for regimens F and beyond. It's regimen E that's the hardest one because it's already going. But we are, with our statisticians, modeling this out and to see what the impact would be. Maybe we have to add, some more participants, or, but we want to make it work. But we want to make it work for people living with ALS to take the drug, but we also want to make it work so that we can interpret the results of the HEALEY ALS trial. So it's a really good question, but it's very complex. But I will say I'm excited that we have this problem to figure out, because it means we have some drugs that are working. All right, I know we're running short of time. I'm just gonna try to see if I can get all your questions. Oh, well, I don't know that we can answer this, but I'll read it since it was asked. My concern is, why are these new drugs so expensive? So I don't have the answer for that. I mean, we have a crazy system here, I think, but for rare diseases, which ALS is considered, still prices are often high, and that makes the cost of developing a drug in ALS is very high. But hopefully, I know a lot of the centers are working very hard to get their the people they care for the oral Radicava, and they'll do the same for Amylyx if it comes out. So there's a commentary that we said the results will be end of September, is now October. I hope it's October. I think we don't know yet until we've locked a D and we've finished the analyses, but we are working as hard as possible, but we want to get it right. I think that's the most important thing. And so we need to lock the database in the best way, make sure it's all monitored and data managed, and all the analyses are done well. But we will share the results as soon as we have them, and go from there. I think we are out of time, but I want to thank everybody for coming, and we hope to see you next week. And thank you, Meghan and Mariah, for all you do for ALS trials in general and the platform trial, and for being here today. Thank you, Allison. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.